Welcome to the Striking Sparks podcast, an outreach of the Mid-South Annual Conference of the Global Methodist Church. Join us while we consider how to stir up one another in love and good works. We welcome you to heart-sharpening conversations of iron sharpening iron in Striking Sparks. Hey, you beautiful people. It's Brother John. I'm here with Brother Bob, my co-host, and we have a special guest. We're going to have a lot of special guests, but she is a particularly special guest.
Sue Eaton is with us, and since the inception of this conference, she has been our prayer coordinator, and the title might be a little bit different from that.
It's close enough.
Team leader of the prayer team. We have just decided from the get-go, we do not want to try to do this as a human initiative first and foremost. We want this to be what God wants. And so prayer was an essential element to set up and get this thing in motion to begin with. And tell us, Sue, anything you want to tell us about yourself, but also just how this developed for you to have this role, how that became your emphasis and your responsibility.
Well, it developed over the years. When I was much younger, before I entered the ministry, I was involved in teaching prayer. I was involved in prayer in the United Methodist Church in the Kentucky Conference. We would go to the annual concert they had down at Lucan and pray for all the singers and the people working with the singers. And it was a very effective ministry, and I enjoyed it very much. And as I grew older and got involved in ministry and seminary and then pastoring a church, I just came to know so much more about how important prayer is in the life of a Christian and in the life of our local churches. Our goal in the Mid-South Conference of the Global Methodist Church is to make every local church a house of prayer, and that each church will do as the Mid-South Conference did. From the very first meeting that we had, we knew deep within our hearts and our minds that this church wasn't going anywhere unless we began everything with prayer. And so we have put an emphasis on that through the years, and we have seen God work in miraculous ways that we could never have put together ourselves. But God has put it together, and we are continuing to depend on Him to lead us and guide us in all that we do. It is a wonderful ministry and one that many in the conference enjoy being part of.
I know I'll be happy to say this real quick. That's more than I thought you'd say based on our conversation before we turned the mics on. But if you're not on the prayer email list, please get on it. Mm-hmm. Every couple of days, if there's somebody who needs prayer, it is hitting our email lanes, and we are and there's actually now a way to connect to the prayer team mm-hmm. on our website, isn't there? Or yes. There's going to be.
There is. Okay. There's supposed to be. I think it's still there. Yeah.
And so if you need prayer, it gets you onto the prayer team. It gets your name in front of them, and you can be as specific as you'd like, or just mm-hmm. Not specific. But as far as you were talking about how this kind of developed over time, you were part of this in the UMC, doing prayer and praying for the different activities. What particularly in the GMC have you found as far as your prayer life that's being stretched the most? I ask all the questions that make you think.
Well, I guess it's getting the message into the local churches, the need to have a prayer coordinator in every local church. Someone who will be responsible for starting a prayer group, for emphasizing prayer with the leadership committee or board that you have in your church, helping them to understand the importance of prayer, and prayer not just from the preacher, but prayer from lay people as well. We want lay people to be trained, and we want lay people to take hold of this ministry and to make it an exciting part. And we are trying to work with our children too to learn how to pray. If we are going to disciple adults, we also need to disciple children and youth. And so if we begin when they are children and youth to teach them how to pray, and then in Sunday school class, they learn how to read their Bible. At home, they learn how to have time together as a family and pray. And they have service projects that they can do through their Sunday school class as well as with their family. And if they will continue to do that, they will get excited about Jesus and they will know him in a personal way. And when they get ready to go away to college, they won't turn their back on the church. They won't discard it because it will be a precious part of their lives, and they will want to continue it and to grow in that in college. So it's a two-part thing. It's, yes, continuing prayers with adults, but also beginning to train the children to be disciples and help them to grow.
And something you just said, I think, is paramount. Actually, it you didn't say it in specific words, but just the idea that prayer is foundational.
It is. It's the first thing we do. If a church is planning to have a revival, what's the first thing you do? You begin to pray about it. Before you ask a preacher to come, you pray about it. Before you plan a committee to get things started, you pray about it. And that's what this prayer group is for. And that prayer group leader can, in the local church, can plan a prayer vigil or some other way to encourage the congregation to pray and be led by God to do what God knows is best for that local congregation.
Beautiful. Yeah, and you said something else that caught my attention because much of my ministry has been in youth ministry and in campus ministry. And in the training for that, we learned that it's high school graduation is the great drop-off cliff of the church.
It is.
Where many do not come back. And we just have had a practice of saying, well, go learn about life, and when you get married and have kids, we'll help you come back to church. But the foundation of prayer is not something that you are heading up a program on. It is the essence of faith that you are developing and saying, how are we going to know Jesus if we never talk to him?
Yes.
So how can we train children and youth in that regard of discipleship aspect of prayer?
It's really not hard. It's really not hard. I've had people say to me after they've heard me when I preach, talk about God speaking to me and telling me what to do and what was coming. And they come up to me and say, Sue, I have prayed and prayed and God has never spoken to me. How do I make that happen? And I said, have you ever stopped and listened for God to speak to you? And they get this quizzical look on their face and say, well, no. I said, there's the problem. It really is simple. If you had a good friend here, a person that lives here on earth, if you had a good friend who you loved to talk to, but you were the only one in the relationship that could talk, what kind of relationship would you have? You could go and talk to him or her and talk for an hour, never stopping, barely taking a breath. And then when you're finished talking, you get up and walk away, not hearing one word from the other person. That wouldn't be much of a relationship, I don't think. But if you pray, tell God what you need, and then stop and just listen. I like to say a phrase of praise. Really, that's because so I don't fall asleep. but it's to help keep focused on listening for God, and just say, "Praise you, Lord," and then sit there for a while, and then say, "I love you, Jesus," and listen. And in the silence, He will speak.
Be still and know that I am Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
But enough, and I didn't for a long time understand that, and didn't listen well enough. Or I prayed with the attitude of, "Lord, tell me quick what you want me to do because I've got to go."
Yeah.
That may sound familiar to some of you, and it was for me, and there was lots of things to do. But I made a huge mistake. But God answered.
And what's interesting, God will answer in His time too.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're in a rush and we'll throw our prayers up and be done,
Mm-hmm.
and God's like, hold up, I'm coming. I'm gonna talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And back when you were talking about being in seminary, and I used to go to Memphis from my church, and
Mm-hmm.
it was about a 2-hour drive. That was a lot of prayer time.
Yes,
And it was a lot of listening time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's a good example, like your commute to work.
Mm-hmm.
Use that as a prayer time to listen.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes helps if you can do a centering prayer or different kinds of prayers.
Right.
But I know for me personally, I've tried centering prayer. I'm too ADHD. A little joke I've told about it. One lady was trying to get me to do centering prayer, and it was while we were in seminary. And she's like, "Now pretend you're on the bottom of water, and any thought that comes to your mind, let it float to the surface, and let a boat drift it off, take it off." Well, that worked for the first thought. The second thought, I was wondering if that was an Evinrude motor on that boat. Was it a Wellcraft, or was it a Carver, or what kind of boat is it now?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, yeah, I can't do that. But I have found Lectio Divina does well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all kinds of ways to pray,
Right.
and that's one thing that I'm thankful when you're out there and you're encouraging people to
Mm-hmm.
pray
Mm-hmm.
and to find their voice in prayer, but also to find their silence in prayer. Mm-hmm. That's mighty important. I'm glad you point to that. Bob, you got anything?
Well,
else?
and your hope is not only to encourage people to pray, but to gain some insight into how to pray, as you've given some wonderful instruction here just now. But on a local level, it is, so I can give you some encouraging word about what's going on at the two churches I serve, and I'll share that with you.
Okay.
But what are you hearing back from what's going on in our churches, and how things are? What's your hope for what develops?
Some of the churches are very enthused and excited and practicing prayer in different ways in their churches, and some churches have not embraced it at all. We just had 6 classes for children and youth on how to pray at the 6 missions conferences that were held around the conference, and we had very few churches bring their children and youth, and but those that came went home very excited, and the teachers went home to teach the rest of the children and to make it a normal practice in their Sunday school classes, to help them learn how to pray and start practicing it now, rather than wait until they're older.
Awesome.
And we are going to be ministering to the children who are here at the conference this week. And on Wednesday, the children are going to be taught how to pray, the children that are here in the daycare. And so we've got to have that going on while we're here as well.
And one of the things that's neat, we've got a prayer. The whole floor up here is prayer. There's a gentleman here that's got some sort of stations for prayer.
Oh, yes.
And so, I mean, we're really trying to soak everything in prayer. And I think that's one thing that we miss in our annual conferences, even from our previous locations. And it probably is why people enjoy annual conference so much
Mhm.
here is because it's different. It's a different attitude,
Right.
and it's a different latitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is you're doing, and you're setting things up and setting people in the motion of prayer. So we thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I'm enjoying it very much.
Good deal.
Great.
Well, so we appreciate you coming on and sparking the conversation of prayer
Sure.
for our annual conference. And I look forward to seeing many, many more emails from you.
Okay.
And
You should have gotten one this morning.
I haven't been on yet.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyway, it's been a pleasure to have you on
Thank you.
Striking Sparks. And if there's anything we can do to help you in the future, you can come back on and hit us up.
Okay. I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, God bless and have a good day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Striking Sparks podcast, an outreach of Mid-South Annual Conference of the Global Methodist Church. We pray you found some enriching and engaging conversation to take with you today. If you're watching us, please like and subscribe on YouTube. On Apple and Spotify, we ask that you follow and leave us a 5-star review. If you have any questions or suggestions for topics in the future, please email us at strikingsparks@midsouthgmc.org.